Welcome to this edition of Reporters on France 24, the programme that brings you some of the best stories from around the world with our reporters. This week we take a closer look at Iraqi Kurdistan, a region looking increasingly on the verge of war. Tens of thousands of Turkish troops are amassed on its border, threatening to launch a cross-border attack. Well, for decades, Kurdish separatist rebels have been engaged in a violent campaign on Turkey. They want more autonomy for some 15 million Kurds who live within Turkey's borders. It's been a bloody conflict with tens of thousands of lives lost. The rebels are known as the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, and for Ankara, the PKK are a terrorist organisation and negotiations out of the question. Well, in recent years, the separatists have stepped up their campaign. Now Turkey's threatening military action to crack down on the rebels, launching attacks from bases in Iraqi Kurdistan. The Kurdish-ruled area, northern Iraq's a semi-autonomous state, and up to now it's been relatively peaceful. But with growing tensions, that stability is looking increasingly fragile. Well, France 24's Lucas Manger and Franck Berrier went to Iraqi Kurdistan to bring us this special report.
The mountains of Iraqi Kurdistan, only a few kilometres from the Turkish border.
Tell them to stop. It's an exercise.
The colonel is a bit taken aback. The Peshmerga haven't moved an inch.
Call Suleiman and tell him to stop.
That was the man who fired the rifle to see if it works. He said he's ready to use it when the time comes.
You could call him the Lord of the Peshmerga. The bishop is a well-known figure in the region. He's a veteran of the conflicts of Kurdistan and knows all the different factions. But now he's aiming to unite the competing groups and, above all, to avoid a confrontation with Turkey, which risks destroying the fragile peace in the region.
Yes, up here, down there, in the village, and here as well.
What happened?
There were bomb attacks and artillery shellings.
This patch of burnt grass is one of the few traces of bombings by Turkish troops. The attacks are few and far between, and it's a long way from being a full-scale war. Inside old United Nations tents, the Peshmerga are deployed in small units. Former Kurdish rebels, they have become the official army of Iraqi Kurdistan. They have an almost mythical status in the region, their name signifying those who confront death.
If the Turks come here, we'll defend ourselves. The Peshmerga have always protected our people, even in freezing weather. We have a parliament, a government, schools. We don't want the PKK and the Turks to start a war in southern Kurdistan. Here we want to hold out our hand in peace to our brothers, the PKK and the Turks. And if they want to bring war to the region, then we have no choice but to defend ourselves and take out our claws.
The same message from a bishop and a soldier.
No, we're not worried. Tell them we're not part of their problem.
You are true Peshmerga. Your camp is close to the church, so make sure to clean up your mess. Dispose of anything you leave behind, and dig holes for your rubbish.
Even if they claim not to be worried, Kurdish authorities have sent 30,000 Peshmerga to this supposed front line. Of course, they want to avoid war, but in this region, anything is still possible.
Those are Turkish soldiers. That's the Turkish base. Look, you can see tanks up there.
As if the situation wasn't complicated enough already, here are Turkish bases on Iraqi territory. Following a 1997 agreement, Ankara has 5 barracks. This one has 3 American tanks and a helipad. And just above, another group of Peshmerga has set up camp. From here, the soldiers survey their Turkish counterparts, all within firing range. The border is 300 kilometres long, meandering across both Kurdish and Turkish territories. On the Kurdish side, the weapons are basic, but the soldier spirit unbreakable.
The Turks use the PKK as an excuse. The PKK fights against the Turks on Turkish territory. We don't take sides with either. Turkey can see that Kurdistan is stable, that's for sure. They want to destabilize us. The PKK isn't here.
The PKK rebellion is hidden in the no man's land between Turkey and Iraq, along this border, which reaches an altitude of 3,500 metres. But the rebels aren't invisible. So far they've been tolerated in the name of Kurdish solidarity. To reach the rebel heartland, you have to go through the Kachan Valley in the northeast of Iraqi Kurdistan. Here, nestled in the heart of the mountains, is the last village before the border. 25 families still live here, but last spring there were 400. Officially, there are no rebels in the village.
The PKK are up there in the mountains. They have to hide there in order to fight.
We don't get involved in all that.
We don't have any contact with the PKK. We're the last village before the border. It's only 20 kilometers from here. The PKK have a problem with the Turks. They're far away from us in the mountains, and we can't tell them to move away from here.
Or else they'll kill us.
Nevertheless, this Kurdish family says they can take us to the rebels. And after a few minutes of discussion, we're told we can meet the PKK. Along a rugged path accessible only by 4x4, we move at a snail's pace, along rocky outcrops with a sheer drop below us, terrain that makes this journey extremely hazardous. On the banks of the river we see 5 uniformed soldiers, Turkish soldiers, almost incognito on Iraqi territory. We get a warm welcome, but the orders are clear. Normally the PKK likes to communicate with the outside world, but under present circumstances, the soldiers are forbidden to talk or to be filmed. This is secret footage. Hospitality is not forgotten. You can't call by without drinking a cup of tea.
We've received orders. This is a military zone. You're not allowed to film, no questions, no discussions.
Armed with grenades and Kalashnikovs, these men are leading the offensive against the Turkish army. The border is 2 hours' walk away, on the other side of the mountains.
Why do you governments treat us like terrorists? We're not terrorists. We're defending our land, our people. There are 40 million Kurds in this region. When you defend yourselves, you're not terrorists. Europe and the United States have put us on their list of terrorists. That's not fair.
The PKK is said to have 3,000 soldiers on Iraqi territory, but the party is keeping hush about their presence. In a valley nearby, the Virgin Mary watches over returning Christians. The PKK's war doesn't really concern them officially, but they're the group most affected by it. Kurdistan is the last peaceful region of war-torn Iraq, which means the Christian population is returning to the region they once fled in the 1960s. But they're finding themselves on the front line once again.
He's saying that Turkey has to understand that these people who left their homes, whether in Baghdad or Mosul or elsewhere, and who have come here, and who the Turks must respect, where will these people go now? To the borders of Syria, Iran, or somewhere else? If there's a war with Turkey, they are the people who will suffer. Turkey must think about these people's concerns.
Their lives shattered by war in Iraq, the Christians have returned to settle here, with the help of Bishop Rabban, who provides the bridge between these different communities. Today he's visiting this family, which has just returned from Baghdad. None of them speak Kurdish, instead preferring Arabic, the language of their former home. The TV channel playing in the living room is an Arabic one.
Here I built a house. And before it was finished, I decided to leave Baghdad and come here. Back there, you lived in an area and you didn't know who your enemies were. You didn't know who was going to kill you or who was going to make life difficult for you. Things are different here. I took my children, my wife, my brother's family, and we all came here.
Christians, Kurds, Turkish soldiers and Peshmerga. All the ingredients are there. And it won't take much to upset the delicate balance between these different groups.
You see, this conflict doesn't just concern Kurdistan. Small countries like us are victims. The future of our country and that of a country like Iraq, which, by the way, hardly resembles Iraq anymore, is decided by the big powers.
Late on Sunday in the town of Erbil, under armed guard, Christians gather for an evening service. Here the Chaldean people seem at peace. The Kurds have allowed the return of this lively religious community. Up to now, all seems to be going well, but civil war has ravaged Iraqi Kurdistan. Christians have been hunted down, and Kurds have fought hard amongst each other. Who knows what could happen if this fragile peace is broken? The Bishop of Erbil dreams of a Kurdistan where Kurds and Christians can live together peacefully.
Why is there no day to commemorate oppressed peoples? 40 million Kurds, Kurdistanis, without a homeland, abandoned, separated, torn apart. But they can dream of being united one day. The cake has been divided up. One slice for Turkey, one for Syria, and one for Iran, and the last for Iraq. When will the dreams of the Kurdish people become a reality? Dreams of peace instead of war, of recognizing their right to live in Kurdistan. It's a country without a name, a state without a name.
It's a region that already has its own flag, army and borders. Iraqi Kurdistan would seem to have everything besides its own currency that's required of an independent state. The United States has given the Peshmerga military control of the area, even if Washington continues to monitor the region closely. Iran is not far away, and the Kurds of northern Iraq are keen to avoid yet another conflict on a territory which has already witnessed so much violence.
Well, joining me now in the studio is France 24's international reporter, Lucas Manger. Lucas, up to now, Iraqi Kurdistan's been a relatively peaceful area. How much would the Kurds have to lose from a conflict with Turkey?
They will have to lose a lot, as the Iraqis actually, because Iraqi Kurdistan is the only safe place in the country. Even on a map, it's very easy to see. You have Mosul, for example, an Iraqi Arab city, which is extremely dangerous and tense these days. But an hour ago from there, when you drive to Erbil, Erbil is very peaceful and quiet. That's why the central Iraqi government in Baghdad and the Kurdish regional government are trying their best to avoid the war between the Turks and the PKK on the Iraqi territory, because one thing that we always forget here is that this is a Turkish problem. PKK and the Turkish army are fighting together these days on another territory. But this is a Turkish problem. The Iraqi and the Kurds from Iraq, they absolutely want to avoid a new conflict on this area.
Now, the Kurdish issue, though, isn't just limited to Turkey and to Iraq, is it? I mean, it's a much wider issue than that.
Yeah, that's the main problem these days, because we focus on the problem between on the border between Turkey and Iraq, because that's where the Turkish army is staying these days. But the Kurdish problem is much larger. It's going to Syria, Turkey, Iran and Iraq. And of course, the Iranian problem with the US these days is very obvious when you go in Iraqi Kurdistan at the moment. The Iraqi Kurds and the Iranian Kurds they're brothers. They're very linked together. There are a lot of people crossing the border legally or illegally. So this is a much broader problem that the European diplomats and the US diplomats, they want to do something about that, but since many years they've done nothing. I mean, the Kurds are asking for a huge territory, but in a certain way, the Iraqis decided their own solution. The Kurds from Iraq decided to have their own territory, and they are not so much interested in a larger Kurdistan. They have everything they want. They have the army, the Peshmergas. They have a territory. They have a flag. They just don't have the currency yet.
And very briefly, of course, the US has urged Turkey to show restraint. Washington doesn't want Turkey to launch any form of military action, does it?
Of course, Iraq is such a problem for the US, and Kurdistan is the only safe place in the country. That's where people trade, for example. You have the international fair in Erbil. That's a kind of example of what could be Iraq in a few years. So the US and the European, they want to avoid a war between Turkey and Iraq, but the Turkish army is very independent.
Luc Amanger, thank you very much indeed. And that's it for this edition of Reporters.